Hi. The next four videos deal with Book 3, Chapter 7 of The Ancient City. This is a chapter titled The Religion of the City. And in it, Fustel analyzes different institutions of ancient civic life. And he finds, in keeping with the thesis of the whole book, that many of these, all these institutions have a religious origin and a religious function in the life of the ancient city, that we misinterpret the ancient peoples if we miss or we neglect this religious element in these institutions. So he begins with the public meals. He notes that in every ancient society that is under consideration, we find shared meals as an important civic institution. These are both meals that are special banquets at certain times of the year, and even daily meals that are a part of a religious ritual that certain people must take part in. And he ends this section with a quote. I'll just share a couple of sentences with you from this. He writes, "Human association was a religion. Its symbol was a meal of which they partook together. Neither interest, nor agreement, nor habit creates the social bond. It is this holy communion piously accomplished in the presence of the gods of the city." And that's how he ends section 1. Interesting observation here that the social bond, the civic bond among members of the city, comes from this sharing of a meal together, a ritual religious meal. That's the origin of the social bond. It's not convenience for commerce or division of labor. It's not sort of ethnic or family or tribal solidarity. It's the fact that these are the people who share in at periodic intervals, who share in a ritual meal before gods that they all hold in common. That is, the civic bond is a religious bond sanctified in these public meals. Fustel also talks about festivals and the calendar as as having a religious origin. It turns out that the calendar initially is simply a list of the religious festivals of the city that are required for the coming weeks, the coming month. And it's not intended initially as a kind of measure of the lunar or the solar cycle. The calendar is not developed in order to assist with historical record keeping or with commercial life. It's intended purely as a religious artifact to inform the people of their civic duty. And this helps to account for the fact that no two cities have the same calendar, the same months, the same lengths of months, or the same start of the year. No two cities have the same gods, and so there's no intersection between these. It's much later in history that we find an attempt to kind of align these calendars so that the year starts at roughly the same time, so that the months have the same length of days. Initially, it would be each city's religious authorities might add or subtract days to months or the years according to the demands of the gods, as those are determined. So all of this originates in this certain type of civic religion that Fustel has been describing. In the third video, he talks about the census. And the census, the enumeration of people and property in the city, turns out also to have a religious origin. It originates in the necessary purification ritual that would take place in each city every number of years. This would require gathering together all the citizens and only the citizens of the city in one place to purify them of all stain and represent them to the god to restore harmony with them. This explains the need for an enumeration, why it is we need to have an exact count of who is present on the day of the census at this particular ritual, and also explains why the penalty for missing the census, for not being present, is being deprived of citizenship. It's not a punishment, it's not vindictive, it's simply the public recognition of the religious fact that you were not present when the people were purified and made acceptable to the divinity. And therefore you're excluded from the religious community of the city, and therefore you're excluded from civic life. You've lost your citizenship and all of its rights. So again, another set of surprising consequences of this religious element in the institution of the census. Finally, Fustel talks about the place of religion in the assemblies, in the law courts, in the army, and in the institution of the triumph after a victory, a military victory. So he talks about religious rites in warfare. We'll see a great deal more about religion in warfare in a chapter later in Book 3 that's coming up. Fustel ends this fourth video, which is number 25, as I'm numbering them right now, with a summary of his view of ancient religion at the level of the city and an attack on earlier rationalist Enlightenment views of ancient religion, specifically singling out Montesquieu. So let me read you just one paragraph from the end of section 4 of chapter 7. Fustel writes, thus, in time of peace, as in wartime, religion intervened in all acts. It was everywhere present. It enveloped man. The soul, the body, private life, public life, meals, festivals, assemblies, tribunals, battles, all were under the empire of this city religion. It regulated all the acts of man, disposed of every instant of his life, and fixed all his habits. It governed a human being with an authority so absolute that there was nothing beyond its control. And thus, says Fustel de Coulanges, was the authority, the power of the ancient religion in the civic and political life of cities. His attack in the final paragraphs of section 4 is on Montesquieu, who held that perhaps the ancient religious rites and rituals were a kind of fabrication that maybe the rulers came up with to redirect the enthusiasm of the mob, to make them easier to govern, to make them more ready to participate in the necessary institutions of warfare, the census, etc. And Fustel says this is virtually the opposite of the truth. There was no conflict between church and state. There was no domination of the religion by the state. In fact, he says the state and the religion were so closely identified that they were not even distinguishable conceptually for the ancients. And to be a citizen of a city is to be part of its public worship. So this idea that the moderns, some of the earlier moderns, have brought to ancient religion is a fundamental mistake, says Fustel. So that's my quick overview of what's coming in the next 4 videos, numbers 22 through 25, about the ancient city, dealing with Book 3, Chapter 7, Religion in the City. I hope you enjoy them. Take care.